Betsy and Thomas here for the American Intelligence Media with Michael McKibben. And today we'd like to discuss a topic with you guys out there. And please feel free to leave your suggestions in the comment box below. But we want to talk about total transparency. It's becoming obvious in our world that the only people that don't know what's going on are average, everyday Americans. It seems like at every attempt that we try to get information from our government, we're thwarted. And we have presented so many audios and articles to show you that really the swamp does everything it can to keep us from knowing what's going on in our country. In fact, it's so bad, you have a Secretary of State rigging her, you know what she did in her bathroom with a server and letting everybody in to see our state secrets. So we're thinking that maybe as we move into this new age of America, which I can't wait for, Thomas, it's going to be such a renaissance, that we need to move into an age of total transparency. What a great topic to talk to Michael McKibben about, who's done a lot of work at Leader Technologies and Americans for Innovations about all the back doors that exist in the software and the programs that are, that we customarily use that really provide no protection, no privacy. So why don't we just open it all up, Michael?
Well, it is opened up right now. The only thing is that the backdoor key is controlled by the NSA, so therefore only those that have access to that group within the NSA and the deep state have access to all the information. So the bottom line is, the reason I think that these people want to maintain those backdoor keys, the official reason is for our safety, for our security, and for our privacy. They want to protect that for us. That's the official word. In private, what they're really saying is, how can we make money from the citizenry if we give them this information? So therefore, we're going to create all these state secret reasons not to give it to them so that they will maintain a monopoly forever on our information.
But, we looked at the Plum books and couldn't figure them out. And you were able to show us and the world that this document was booby-trapped by, it would have to be the people at Senior Executive Service who were deliberately hiding information that should be available to Americans, but booby-trapping it in digital ways. And then also I look at Congress that still refuses to tell us who they paid off for the sexual harassment for all these congressmen. I'm a taxpayer. I paid for that. I want to know these things.
Right. Well, in any system you create, you've got to create a set of assumptions by which you create that system. And just like this group of people have created this very elaborate and convoluted mechanism for keeping information to themselves and out of the hands of the American public, the republic system needs to be created. It doesn't appear that it ever existed outside of theory and I would say propaganda that made us in the general public think that we had a transparent system when we actually don't, which if you think about it, is quite a trick. And what we've seen is that trick has been created almost exclusively by attorneys in their ilk. So and since the Constitution is a legal document, in one sense, it makes sense that it was a bunch of attorneys. But by the same token, we the people cannot allow a single profession to run us, to run our government, and to administrate our power. We've got to take, maybe we don't take it back. We create it. It's this second revolution you're talking about. We actually do what we never did in the first revolution.
Yeah, like we follow the Constitution.
Right.
And and get the attorneys out of Washington.
Right.
What do you say?
I say the Geneva Convention says you can't spy on anybody that isn't an enemy. And when the U.S. Patriot Act was passed, it made all of us possible enemies. It made us all possible radical Islamic terrorists. It made all of us terrorists. We all became the enemy. And then it was rewritten, and they said, oh, don't worry, we're going to, now that we know that we've calmed down terrorism throughout the world, we're going to change it, and Obama's going to change it to the U.S. Freedom Act, which actually gave you even less freedoms. So what is happening here? We know that President Trump gave Dan Coates, I think about 45 days ago, 35 days to come up with a plan to stop the surveillance of all Americans. It is illegal. It must be stopped. Some of us believe that that's why he is going after the big people who steal your information. That would be Facebook, Amazon, Google, and the other monopolies, Twitter, the ones that were all stolen from Leader Technologies, patents, innovations, intellectual property, which we've spoken about before. And Michael's here. He's such a perfect example of that. He would have made sure that there was no surveillance of anybody in those systems. But now it's complete surveillance, and it's been weaponized against us. And we actually believe, some of us, that there is an active plan right now, and that has to do with why Eric Schmidt came up missing and dropped off of Alphabet's board, and why Peter Thiel shifted his entire business over, why the plan to sell his Mark Zuckerberg's owned shares of Facebook has laid out. The man who said he was going to use it all for philanthropy, now he's dissolving his empire. Why? It's probably going down because I don't know that you can change those systems. We need new systems to replace them. And those are monopolies supported by our government and intelligence agencies. Let me just say, having been in one of them, we were told point blank that what we were doing was illegal because it was against the Geneva Convention for us to spy on Russia and other countries we weren't at war with. Cold War notwithstanding. So what are we really doing with intelligence? Lying and cheating. So I was just asked by Michael, who do I think the NSA is, good or bad? Well, if we were at war with somebody, we would need it. If we're not at war with somebody, it's just an evil way to control information intelligence, lying, cheating, subterfuge, espionage, and the rest of it.
So what is Senior Intelligence Service? Have you looked into that as you're looking into Senior Executive Service?
Yes, let me jump on that one.
Okay.
When the civil service was created, even before it was transformed by
Christine Marcy.
Christine Marcy. We have to give credit where credit is due. She came in and helped Jimmy Carter supposedly bring professionals into the civil service so they could be paid more, and a special thing. But what already existed was a system above the civil service where you could get to a rank of the GS, the General, General Service
Administration. GSA.
Yes, and the GS ranks from 1 through 15. Well, there was a 16, 17, and 18, right?
Right.
So when they started the SES, the Senior Executive Service, at the same time they started a thing called the Senior Cryptological Service. And that was because they had to pay big bucks for the people who were doing these very things we're talking about, spying on people. So it was modeled after the old system that went into the higher ranks of 16, 17, 18, which hardly anyone knew about. So when it was started, it was immediately changed to the Senior Intelligence Service, well, quickly thereafter. So the SIS had, from the get-go, a rank of 16, 17, and 18, and then that was kind of the model for all Senior Executive Service branches, that they started above the highest rank that civil servants can make, and that's where they started their ranks. And some of them had 3 ranks above, some had six ranks above. Now it's kind of fallen back to 3 ranks. But the point is, from the beginning, the intelligence service was the number one place where they knew they might have to hire people and pay them a whole lot more money than the civil service GS ranks provide, as well as bonuses for doing these amazing things. So who were those people from the get-go from 78? Those would have been the people planning to steal patents of what they saw was the coming biggest industry in human history, which was the cyber world, virtual, and what you have done, Michael, which is making the social networking scalable. So I think from the beginning that was the most corrupt of all of the senior executive services, in my opinion.
Well, back to the subject of transparency. It just is shaken down to look like this, folks. They can spy on us. They can harvest us in any way they think, from dropping chemtrails on us and spraying us like bugs, to poisoning our food, to selling our data, our personal data. And of course, after we don't have jobs, then they can open up their next business, which is opioid clinics, to take care of our dying. I mean, it's just a sick thing. And, you know, we're the people being farmed. That's who we are with these elite global rulers. And so we're the ones that are the victims here. But in the meantime, they operate in darkness and in shadows, and they keep us from knowing what we're paying for. But then again, you look, it's so convoluted, we're being farmed. And so you've got senior executive service and all of their various forms, and you mentioned the senior intelligence service. I can't imagine that they're doing good. What, you have an intelligence officer, and then sitting next to them is one of these SIS people overlooking and thwarting and obstructing the work of good intelligence officers?
Well, let me give you a parallel example that I have personal experience with in the work I used to do in the Christian world in the Soviet Union. And this was started in Brezhnev's era. Whenever you encountered any government official, and we did a lot, we encountered a lot of border officials and police officials, customs officials. Whenever your papers were looked at, there was always a second person looking over his or her shoulder. And that person was a member of the Communist Party who was watching the people who were doing the work. So everyone was suspect, including all their employees. So I see the SES, the SIS, all these variants at the state level and at the local level, essentially members of the Communist Party in parallel with what happened in the Soviet Union. We have gotten to that point.
So surely when all of those Chicago gang were sitting around with their favorite instructor, Mr. Saul Alinsky, they had all this planned out early on.
They had to. There's no other way to maintain this level of control over this many people without having a whole lot of watchers who do no work. They stand there and watch the people who are doing work, which even gets worse when you look at the way they've outsourced to groups like Serco. So you've got watchers watching the bureaucrats who hire the subcontractors who do some work, maybe.
That's the Office of Inspector General, SES. And then the Special Counsel, that is also SES. As a matter of fact, they're so special that when you have a special counsel, the SES gives them $100 million a year for their investigation. And the Office of Inspector General is the SS that comes behind that makes sure that all the SES members and all the elected people and all the appointed people all stay in line, because if they don't, there's an Inspector General in every single agency that is supposed to be going behind everyone, making sure no one does anything wrong. Those investigative reports from the Office of the Inspector General, again, directly created when SES was created, along with the Special Counsel, and Michael can go into a great deal about the way that that's not even legal, but in a certain way, because it's more of a regulation than it is a law.
An administrative agency, not a law.
Exactly, it's not even a law. So he works underneath the guise of the same thing that caused DACA. Just a letter to an agency saying to do it a certain way. But anyway, the Office of Inspector General. Will they ever really discover anything bad in the agency that they're the Inspector General for? What a joke.
Really?
Can I give you what Chris Farrell from Judicial Watch just said the other day? I heard him say it. He's probably said it before. But he said the Office of Inspector General is where the truth goes to die.
Yes.
Exactly. And I point this out. The Office of Inspector General report on FISA said that Comey was in 100% non-compliance with FISA requests. They said that the NSA was just giving them to everyone, and they were pointing at George Papadopoulos's and Carter Page's. Why didn't anything happen? The Inspector General of the Congress said that the Imran Awan gang, the second largest, Hillary's the largest espionage in American history, but the Imran Awan gang, they should all be locked up. They found them guilty of all kinds of crimes, over a dozen crimes, all espionage. Nothing's happening. Because why? It has to go through the Department of Justice. And who runs the Department of Justice? That would be SES members who are controlled by 500 lawyers in the Department of Justice, the Council of 500, who determines who gets paid what. And even a Bruce Orr, after his crimes, don't get me started on his crimes.
Oh, a little demotion, moved to another little office. Really?
But he didn't get moved off the Council of 500. He still gets to determine whether McCabe gets his retirement.
He was instrumental in trying to overthrow the United States government, people. Why isn't he being locked up?
Because the Office of Inspector General, remember, can only point out a crime. The minute that they have the crime and the evidence, it must be pointed out, but then it is up to the agency that they report it to, which they work underneath, to the boss of that agency, and then Jeff Sessions determines what Michael Horowitz has found to be something to act upon or not. John Huber is not independent that he can start a grand jury indictment concerning the Andrew McCabe findings. No, everyone's wrong about that says that. That is incorrect. Nope, they can't do jack.
Right.
They have to go through Jeff Sessions or Rod Rosenstein if it's an area.
Sessions has to order a law enforcement action by the FBI to do a criminal investigation.
Okay, so now they're eating their own because the FBI is filled with all these SES corrupt types, and you've got the Department of Justice. And you can give these cases to these attorneys who will take forever to do anything. Attorneys are the most inefficient people on the face of the earth, and their profession, all it does is it's there to stammer, confuse, obstruct, and thwart.
Let's use a playground analogy. As long as we are in the justice system's sandbox, we will not see justice.
Never.
And so we Americans are naive when we think, well, something's wrong, we need to file a lawsuit. No, when these people hear that, they say, oh boy, you're coming to my sandbox.
Getting a cut of that.
You will never get out of my sandbox.
Mm-hmm.
So what President Trump needs to do is take this issue out of the Justice Department's sandbox. Mm-hmm. That's what's got to happen. You can't have a dysfunctional system fixing itself. It just doesn't work.
That's where you go right back to the military tribunals. How else are we going to clean this up?
Well, the ones who have top secret security clearances can simply be charged with breach of their security clearance. And that in itself doesn't even require trial. When you sign these documents, you sign your life away. Now,
didn't you sign one of those?
I signed many of them, and the higher I went, and the higher clearances I got, the more I signed until I got up to for the president's eyes only. Now, for the president's eyes only is above Q clearance, even for whatever silo you're in. And so the deal...
How do you think we know about Q?
The deal is that when you get these clearances, if you make one mistake, that's it. There isn't a trial. They show you you made a mistake. Doesn't matter whether you had intent or not. Has nothing to do with intent. That is a joke. If I made a mistake with the crypto card,
you mean Hillary didn't mean to share classified information?
Judicial Watch has over 10 top secret documents that had gone to Huma's computer, that had gone to Anthony's computer, that went into his insurance file, and yet Andrew McCabe did nothing about it for 3 weeks, and then Comey did nothing about it afterwards. And the text messages show this, that nothing was done about one of an extra espionage, astounding, I don't even have names for this, the security breaches that have happened that went to Huma's computer are enough to put all those people in jail. And anyone who destroyed a computer or any of their devices or didn't interview them properly or changed those 302 interview notes that they made or changed Comey's exoneration of Hillary and changed the words so that there was nothing criminal in it, or Loretta Lynch changing it to a matter. This is all this obfuscation of what you would call intelligence and the absolute intent to hide these things from the American people.
Douglas, I have a question for you. Since these are all attorneys, you've got to believe that they all have CYA. They've all got some document sitting in secret somewhere that exonerated them from any activity that was illegal. So given that, we are never going to win this argument, it seems to me, by pointing out the law, because they've already broken the law and they know it, and they've already gotten exonerated. So it seems to me they're just waiting for the day they get to pull out their exoneration letter and then thumb their nose at the justice system.
I am going to say the answer to that was given to me by Michael McKibben, who says there are laws that say that at the top you can do this, and at the bottom it says they can break the law. And you've read these to me over and over again, and I just scratch my head saying, at the bottom it says that everything above is abnegated?
In 1996, the day that Congress passed the Economic Espionage Act and the Federal Trade Secrets Act on October 10th, precisely, 1996, another law was slipped in called the False Statements Accountability Act of 1996. And that law had been on the books unchanged since, I think, 1938. And it said what you would expect, that when you come before a government tribunal, Congress, a court, you, the attorney, the person giving the testimony, are supposed to tell the truth. You can't lie. And that's subsection A. Subsection B says subsection A doesn't apply if you're an attorney, a party to the case, when you're talking to Congress or the courts.
It's legal to lie.
It's legal to lie.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I have pointed that out to congressmen who did not know this law existed. And we've actually written about it, a number of people have written about it in Americans for Innovation. The False Statements Accountability Act of 1996. Go look it up, look at subsection B, and you will see that these people got a law written that said they could do whatever they wanted to do. They could lie through their teeth, and it wasn't illegal.
So does that mean that James Clapper goes scot-free for all of his lies?
If you read it like I do, yes.
And that's why they keep doing these things. That's why we started working.
That's why they're so arrogant.
Yeah, and it's why we work from the opposite point of view, and we say, oh, let's look at the National Defense Authorization Act, because it actually says you can propagandize Americans. You can use the Department of Defense in our own national borders, and you can lie to Americans as long as it's part of the presidential administrative policy. And every American is assumed a terrorist until otherwise proven. We are in an age when everything is the reverse.
Right.
And that's that. You can have a law that says you can lie as long as you're a government agent. How about this one? I want to put in jail any FBI agent that allows someone to get off of a crime because they turn in somebody who committed a crime bigger than theirs. That's lying, cheating. That is true Jesuit tactics of subterfuge, of manipulation, of mind control, of breaking the law, of bending the law. There should be no such thing.
You know, we can have some hope. And we were chuckling about it earlier. But if you remember that video where Hillary came out and she was just beside herself. Michael, you do it so well. Just like, what did
Why
she
am
say?
I not 50 points ahead, you ask?
Yes, and she was just screaming. And the rest of us out in, the normal world were going, lady, did you see the rallies? Have you seen all the information that's on the internet about you? How in the world could you think that? But of course, we've come to learn that the entire system was working for her. But yet we won, people. And we won because of the power of the internet. You see, they didn't create the internet scalability the way that Leader Technologies did. They stole it. So they stole the car, but they didn't know how to drive it. But we patriots out here, we know how to drive it. We know how to make memes. We make funny audios. We know that our goal is to educate our fellow citizen so that they are fully informed with what is going on. So have hope, because since the last election, baby, you should see how we drive this thing. We've tuned up that transmission. We can take it down any racetrack and we can whoop their ass. So they have a long learning curve before they get to where we are. Your job is to make sure that information like this gets out to your social network, because the bottom line is there are more of us worldwide than there are of them, and they're getting scared.
You are so right. Mainstream media has been the #1 tool for intelligence manipulation, propaganda, yellow journalism, and politicizing what the bankers, brokers, and the military-industrial complex and politicians wanted us to believe. But now it doesn't control us anymore. It's called fake news. People seek the truth other places. So to realize that the mainstream media was the most powerful intelligence tool, you still have the joke of James Clapper, John Brennan, Comey, and others coming out thinking they can use that to manipulate the way Americans think. It doesn't work that way anymore. So what do they call them? They call Comey leaky. They call Clapper sneaky, and they call Brennan creepy. And that is probably the best meme that I have seen in a long time. Leaky, sneaky, and creepy, because those guys, every time they open their mouth on the mainstream media, they're committing a crime. Not only because they're telling new lies, but because they are abnegating their top secret security clearance by speaking about presidential privileged information and the duties that they had while they were in those intelligence officer positions and leading those intelligence agencies. Everything in Comey's book is a crime. I cannot believe we live in an age when a Jeff Sessions, Mr. Magoo, can sit and watch these crimes and nothing happens. But have hope, as Betsy said. Everyone knows it's fake news now. We've used their weapon against them now. And Trump is using the tweet like a nuclear bomb.